So we've got some big words for this lesson: cellular respiration and photosynthesis. Cellular respiration and photosynthesis. So I'll first start with cellular respiration. The first part of the first word is cell, C-E-L-L. And you may know that all living things are made of cells. So our bodies have all these different kinds of cells in it, listed here, and even more than that. So there's bone cells, blood cells, muscle cells, and there's like different kinds of each of these. Like there's red blood cells, there's white blood cells. So lots and lots of cells, but all living things are made up of cells. Cells are the basic building blocks of life. So in the chemistry unit, we learned that elements found in the periodic table are the building blocks of all matter, like everything. But if we just focus on life, just on living things, you can break all living things down into these small pieces called cells, and millions and billions of cells put together will form tissues, and tissues put together will form organs in our body, like the heart and the lungs. And then when you put all of our organs together, then we get the full human body. And one last point here: all cells come from pre-existing cells. All cells come from pre-existing cells. So sometimes a cell will split into two cells. We call that cell division. And that way we can get some more cells. So when you're really small, well, like a baby, as a baby grows up, there's a lot of cell division going on. They get more and more cells. However, when you get to my age and older, there's still some cell division, but a lot of our cells are dying too, and maybe, so maybe I'm not gaining in number of cells, but you guys are still growing, so you guys probably are. So cellular respiration. So first of all, cells need energy. Okay, all of the cells that are doing work for us in our bodies, they need energy to do that work. They get that energy from certain molecules called sugars or fats or proteins. In other words, food. Okay, we eat food. Food has these molecules in there, and those molecules have lots of energy stored inside of them that our cells are able to unlock. But in order to unlock that energy, a process is required called cellular respiration. And that process requires oxygen to do that. Okay, so that's why we have our lungs, that's why we breathe. So we can get oxygen into our bodies, because all of our cells need oxygen in order to help convert that energy that's stored in sugars to be a useful kind of energy that our body can use. So that's what cellular respiration is. It's kind of summarized by this line here. I call this a word equation. So glucose is a kind of sugar. It's just an example of a sugar. So we have sugar plus oxygen yields. This arrow stands for yields, or it produces carbon dioxide plus water plus energy. So our cells take glucose and oxygen together, and they are able to use these two ingredients, I'll call them, use these two ingredients to create these three things. The main thing it creates is energy, but water and carbon dioxide also get released when this happens. So you may know that we breathe in oxygen, and when we breathe out, some of that stuff we breathe out is carbon dioxide. So this process is called cellular respiration in red here. Glucose and oxygen are combined to release energy to be used by the cell. Carbon dioxide and water are also released as byproducts. Okay, so that's cellular respiration, and all cells, or most cells of living things, have to do that. to release energy from sugars. Next is called photosynthesis. So where do these sugars come from? So ultimately, the energy comes from sunlight. Okay, so the sun gives off a lot of energy and it shines down onto Earth, and plants are able to absorb that sunlight energy and combine it with carbon dioxide, which is a gas in the air, and water, which it gets from the soil through its roots. So plants are able to combine these three things and use them to create sugar. And it also releases oxygen as a byproduct. All right, so this process has a name. It's the other word in the title of this lesson. It's photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. So in the process called photosynthesis, plants take in carbon dioxide, water, and energy from sunlight to produce glucose or sugar and oxygen. Plants require a green pigment called chlorophyll to do this. So yeah, there's also like a secret ingredient that's needed. It doesn't really get used up in the plant, but it's kind of like the factory where all this process happens, this photosynthesis process happens. That pigment is called chlorophyll, and it's green, and that's why a lot of plants are green, or at least they have parts of it that are green, so that they can do this photosynthesis process. So this slide is just the word equation for photosynthesis. So just like how I showed you, I'll go back to it, just like how cellular respiration had a word equation, photosynthesis has a word equation as well. So plants take carbon dioxide and water, they combine them together, and along with light energy and chlorophyll, to produce, this arrow means to produce, glucose and oxygen. Now you may notice that it looks kind of similar to cellular respiration. A lot of the parts to it are the same words. So the next slide is a comparison of the two. So left side cellular respiration, right side photosynthesis. So we'll start with energy and glucose. So in cellular respiration, cells extract energy from glucose or sugar. Okay, so cells, they're able to get the energy out of sugar. Photosynthesis does the opposite. Photosynthesis stores energy into sugar, and they get that energy from sunlight. Okay, so plants will store sunlight energy into sugar, and then cells will get that energy out of the sugar and use it to do its functions. All right, so that's one comparison. Next comparison, I'm going to talk about the gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide. So in cellular respiration, cells use oxygen and then they give off carbon dioxide. But photosynthesis is the opposite. Plants use carbon dioxide and give off oxygen when they do photosynthesis. So this forms a cycle. Okay, this forms a cycle. You have plants giving off oxygen, so then oxygen's in the air, and then animals can breathe in the oxygen and use that oxygen, and then they breathe out carbon dioxide, which the plants can use again. So it's a cycle, and the theme of this week is cycles in ecosystems. Okay, next, water. In cellular respiration, cells release water, but in photosynthesis, the plants use water. So that's why you've got to water your plants so that they can get water and do photosynthesis. And finally, what types of cells do each of these things? So cellular respiration is done by almost all cells. Plant and animal cells, they all have to do this process where they extract energy from sugar. Whereas photosynthesis is only done by plant cells that have that green pigment of chlorophyll. Okay, so there's one difference there. Only plants with the green chlorophyll can do photosynthesis, whereas both plants and animal cells can do cellular respiration. And this final picture is just for me to reiterate that it is a cycle. There is one important cycle that's going on. Two gases are being cycled by these two processes, oxygen and carbon dioxide. So photosynthesis gives off oxygen, and cellular respiration uses that oxygen and gives off carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is used in photosynthesis. It just cycles over and over and over again so that neither of these gases will run out. Okay, as long as both processes are happening in the ecosystem, neither of these gases will run out. However, if the ecosystem were to be damaged and destroyed, let's say humans are doing deforestation, so they're cutting down a lot of the trees and maybe removing a lot of the plants that normally do photosynthesis. If we have less plants, less trees doing photosynthesis, that's going to create an imbalance, okay? Because we need them to create that oxygen. So if we get rid of all of them, if we kill a lot of them, then it's going to throw off the balance of these gases, and that's not a good thing. All right, so in a nutshell, that's what these two processes are. You can refer back to the slideshow. Like it's hard to remember all the details, so that's why I give you these slideshows, so you can always refer back to them as you do your assignments and as you do your tasks. So I'm just going to give you a Google form for you to check your understanding on cellular respiration and photosynthesis.